What kind of things do we think about? What problems do we ponder? What problems does Elon Musk think about?
Making life multiplanetary, accelerating the transition to sustainable energy, the internet, broadly speaking, and then genetics and AI.
Those seem like some really hard problems. What do most of us think about every day? Not much, I guess. Maybe we think about problems at school. Let's have a look. Describe the dynamics of tectonic plates and their relationship to earthquakes and volcanic activity. Outline the main causes of deforestation. Explain the relationship between deforestation and climate change. What was the difference between the Virginia plan and the New Jersey plan? Find the product of this expression. These all seem like exercises. Maybe it gets better at university. Predict the approximate angles between the two bonds indicated in an phosphate transfer transition state. In what ways do intramembranous and endochondral ossification differ? Or show this crazy thing. I think you get the idea. It looks like more of the same. Maybe a more complicated version of the same? All of those are exercises, not problems. What is the difference? Paul Zeitz is a professor of mathematics at the University of San Francisco. He also won the USA Mathematical Olympiad, graduated from Harvard, and even started his own school. Quite a successful guy. He spent a big portion of his life solving and teaching how to solve mathematical problems. What does he have to say about the difference between problems and exercises?
A problem and an exercise. And so an exercise is something that you know how to get the answer to immediately. Everybody who's past fourth grade, this is an exercise, right? You know what to do. And likewise, if you're just a grade or two beyond that, then this is also an exercise. Even though you'll probably get it wrong, it's still getting it right or wrong does not make it not be an exercise. It's hard and you'll get it wrong. It's still an exercise. Okay. A problem, by definition, is a math question that's not an exercise. And what's a problem will depend on your experience and how much you've studied. But by their very nature, problems are not the things that are at the end of the chapter, where you just where it uses the material that you read about during that chapter. A problem. What a problem requires is investigation. And investigation requires time. Problems also require getting them wrong. Usually problems end in failure. And failure is not something bad. Failure is part of the process. I wrote a book about problem solving in 1999, and I chose as my epigraph one of my favorite quotes about problem solving. But this quote sums up the whole thing, which is: the explorer is the person, or is a person. I don't remember. It's or the who is lost. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing, is exploring.
Let's look again. What was the difference? What type of government? Find the product. How do they differ? Now let's compare that with what is the optimal human diet? How to cure cancer? How to solve poverty? Write a bestseller. I think you already noticed the difference. Why are problems even important in the first place?
So what we're talking about in this connection is problem formulation rather than problem solution. And I believe that problem formulation is usually much more important than problem solving, and in many cases more difficult. It doesn't look more difficult, but it turns out to be harder in some ways, in many cases. You have to ask, what are the real requirements in this situation? What are the real conditions that the solution must satisfy? If you get that right, then you can try and figure out what the solution is. There's one place, however, where the problems are formulated for you, School. It's almost the only place where the problems are formulated for you, and then you just solve them. In almost any other place, in almost any other human activity, the challenge is to formulate the problem, and then later solve it.
And I guess you can trust a Nobel laureate on that. By now you have probably figured out that successful people typically work on really hard problems. But the question is, how can we start doing that? Obviously, we need a problem to work on. We've all got problems, man. So we will leave searching for problems for another time. For the rest of this video, let's focus on the work part. How should we work then? Basically, we need to do deep work. There is a cool book about it by Newport. He describes deep work as professional activities performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that push your cognitive capabilities to their limit. These efforts create new value, improve your skill, and are hard to replicate. To me, in a way, deep work is thinking and assiduity. We know what thinking is, right? But do we really do it? What is the longest amount of concentrated thinking you can do? Paul Zeitz tells us that most of us are not used to thinking hard for more than a minute or so. He gives us a time scale, powers of concentration, where level 1 would be thinking hard about a problem for maybe a minute, level 3 maybe for an hour, and level 10 your whole lifespan. He encourages us not to be satisfied with level 1 and that we should aspire to train to move up this scale. In other words, you should take more time to think about life-altering decisions than Neo did in The Matrix.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Seriously, that is some level 1 thinking, Neo. You simply cannot do thinking in bursts of 20 seconds at a time, constantly interrupted by Facebook messages or Twitter tweets, or fiddling with your iPod, or watching something on. This should cover thinking for now. What is assiduity? Charlie Munger will explain.
Have a lot of assiduity. I like that word because it means sit down on your ass until you do it.
This is deep work in a nutshell. But how do we practice some of these things? To practice, the Rezewitz recommends reading books, introspection, having a long, uninterrupted talk with one other person. Next time, we'll cover another way to start. For that, we just need to set aside some time, a pen, and paper.